The scream tore through the abandoned homestead, just as the first crack of thunder split the sky, and Willa Vance knew with absolute certainty that she was going to die here, alone with a baby that refused to be born. She had been traveling to meet her sister in Sacramento when the wagon wheel broke 3 miles outside Verde, Nevada, and the elderly couple she had been riding with made the difficult decision to continue on horseback, promising to send help back from town. That was 8 hours ago, before the contractions started coming hard and fast, before the storm rolled in like God's own fury across the desert landscape, before Willa realized that this baby was coming whether she was ready or not. The homestead had been a blessing at first, a shelter from the wind that was picking up speed across the open land, but now it felt like a tomb. The roof leaked in 4 places. The single room was thick with dust and the smell of abandonment, and Willa was sprawled on the dirt floor with her back against a wall, her traveling dress soaked through with sweat and rain that dripped through the ceiling. She was 22 years old, a widow of 6 months, and she had never felt more terrified in her entire life. Her husband Thomas had died in a mining accident in Virginia City before he even knew she was carrying his child, and Willa had been making her way west ever since, running from the memories and the pitying looks, trying to find some kind of future for herself and the baby. Now it seemed like there would be no future at all, just this storm and this pain and this crushing loneliness. Another contraction seized her body, and Willa bit down on the leather strap she had torn from her travel bag, trying not to scream again. The pain was beyond anything she had imagined, a force of nature as unstoppable as the storm raging outside. She had helped her mother birth her younger siblings back in Missouri, had seen the midwife work, had thought she understood what it would be like. She understood nothing. The door burst open with a crash that made her cry out, and for one wild moment, Willa thought it was just the wind. Then a figure stumbled through, rain-soaked and solid, and her heart seized with hope and terror in equal measure. "Jesus Christ," the man said, and his voice cut through the storm like a knife. He slammed the door shut behind him and stood there dripping, taking in the scene with eyes that were sharp even in the dim light. "Madam, are you—" Another contraction hit, and Willa couldn't hold back the scream this time. The sound seemed to galvanize the stranger into action. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering uncertainly before settling on her shoulders. All right, I have got you," he said, and there was something steady in his voice that cut through Willa's panic. "My name is Cole Ashford, and I am going to help you through this. When did the contractions start?" "This morning," Willa gasped out between pants. "Early." They were not bad at first, but now, how far apart? Cole was already shrugging out of his soaked coat, looking around the dismal room with an expression that suggested he was cataloging resources. "I do not know. Close. Very close." Cole nodded, and in the flash of lightning that illuminated the room, Willa got her first good look at him. He was probably around 25, with dark hair plastered to his forehead, and a face that was all hard angles and weathered tan. He wore the rough clothes of a working cowboy, and his hands were calloused when they touched her arm, but his eyes were kind. That kindness was what made Willa start to cry. "I am scared," she whispered, and hated herself for the admission. "I know," Cole said simply. "But you are not alone anymore. I have helped birth calves and foals, and I assisted a doctor once when we were out on the range and a rancher's wife went into labor. I am not going to lie to you and say this will not hurt, but I am going to make sure you and this baby come through it safe." "Do you understand me?" Willa nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "What is your name?" "Willa. Willa Vance." "All right, Willa, I need to see how far along you are. Is that all right? The intimacy of it should have mortified her, but Willa was beyond shame now. She nodded again, and Cole moved with surprising efficiency, helping her shift position, his touch clinical but gentle. The examination seemed to take forever and no time at all, and when Cole sat back, his expression was serious. "The baby is coming soon," he said. "Real soon. We need to get you more comfortable and get some supplies together. Do you have anything with you?" "My bag," Willa managed, pointing to where her carpet bag lay near the door. "There are some cloths, a blanket." Cole retrieved the bag and began pulling out items, his movements quick and purposeful. He spread the blanket on the ground and helped Willa move onto it, then used his knife to cut one of her petticoats into strips. The intimacy of a strange man cutting apart her undergarments should have bothered her, but all Willa could focus on was the next wave of pain building inside her. "I need to boil water," Cole muttered, more to himself than to her. "Clean everything as best I can." "There is no fireplace," Willa said weakly. "No wood." Cole cursed under his breath, then seemed to make a decision. He pulled out a small metal flask from his saddlebag and poured the contents over his hands, the sharp smell of whiskey filling the air. It was not boiling water, but it was something. "This is going to have to do," he said. "All right, Willa, next contraction I need you to push. Can you do that?" Could she? Willa had no idea, but when the next wave hit, her body seemed to take over, driven by instinct older than thought. She pushed, and Cole was there, his hands steady, his voice a constant stream of encouragement and instruction. "That is good, that is real good. You are doing great. Take a breath now. Get ready for the next one." Time became something fluid and strange, measured only in contractions and pushes and Cole's steady presence. The storm raged outside, rain hammering against the roof, thunder shaking the walls, but inside the abandoned homestead, there was only this primal struggle, this dance of life and death and pain. "I cannot," Willa sobbed at one point, exhausted beyond measure. "I cannot do this anymore." "Yes, you can," Cole said firmly, and when she looked at him, his eyes were blazing with conviction. "You are the strongest woman I have ever seen, Willa Vance, and you are going to bring this baby into the world. One more push. Come on." She pushed, and suddenly Cole's expression changed, his hands moving with new urgency. "The head is out," he said, and there was wonder in his voice. "One more, Willa. One more big push and you will have your baby." Willa gathered every last scrap of strength she had left and pushed with everything in her. And then suddenly, the pressure was gone, and there was a new sound in the room. A thin, angry wail that cut through the storm like a declaration of war against the universe. "It is a boy," Cole said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "You have a son, Willa." He was moving quickly now, using the strips of petticoat to clean the baby's face and mouth, then wrapping him in another cloth before placing him on Willa's chest. The baby was tiny and red and absolutely perfect, and when Willa looked down at him, she felt something crack open inside her chest, a love so fierce and immediate that it took her breath away. "Hello," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, little one, I am your mama." The baby's cries quieted at the sound of her voice, and his eyes opened, dark and unfocused, searching. Willa held him close, feeling the warmth of his small body against hers, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. But Cole was not done. He was still working, helping with the afterbirth, making sure Willa was not bleeding too much, his movements efficient despite the dim light and primitive conditions. When he was finally satisfied, he sat back on his heels and wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a smear of dirt across his temple. "You did it," he said quietly. "You both did it." Willa looked up at him, this stranger who had stumbled into her darkest moment and pulled her through it, and felt something shift inside her. It was not love, not yet, but it was gratitude and recognition and the first stirring of something that might become love, given time. "Thank you," she said, and the words felt hopelessly inadequate. "I would have died without you, we both would have." Cole shook his head. "You would have found a way, you are tougher than you think. What were you doing out in this storm?" "Heading back to the ranch where I work," Cole said, settling back against the wall across from her. "The Lucky Star, about 5 miles north of here. I was in Verde picking up supplies when the storm hit. I saw this place and figured I would wait it out." He smiled slightly. "Did not expect to deliver a baby." "Neither did I," Willa said with a weak laugh. "I was supposed to be in Sacramento by now. Everything went wrong. Or maybe everything went right," Cole said, looking at the baby. "He is here and he is healthy and you came through it. That is not nothing." They fell into silence, listening to the storm rage outside. The baby had fallen asleep against Willa's chest, his tiny fingers curled against her skin, and she felt the exhaustion of the day crashing over her like a wave. Her eyes kept drifting shut, but every time they did, fear would spike through her and she would force them open again. "You need to sleep," Cole said, noticing. "I will keep watch." "I am afraid something will happen," Willa admitted. "That I will wake up and nothing is going to happen," Cole interrupted gently. "I give you my word. Sleep, Willa. You have earned it." There was something in his voice that made her believe him, and finally, Willa let her eyes close. She drifted off with her son in her arms and the sound of rain on the roof, feeling safer than she had any right to feel in an abandoned homestead in the middle of nowhere. When she woke, gray dawn light was filtering through the gaps in the walls, and the storm had passed. Cole was still there, still awake, feeding small sticks into a fire he had somehow managed to coax to life in a cleared corner of the room. He had found wood somewhere, dry enough to burn, and the warmth was a blessing. "You stayed," Willa said, her voice rough with sleep. Cole looked over at her and smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "Of course I stayed. How are you feeling?" "Like I was trampled by a herd of cattle," Willa admitted, "but alive. And the little one." Willa looked down at her son, who was stirring against her chest, his face scrunching up in preparation for a cry. "I think he is hungry." "There is some jerky in my saddlebag if you need food," Cole offered, then seemed to realize what she meant and turned his back quickly, giving her privacy. Willa would have laughed if she had the energy. The man had just delivered her baby, but nursing was somehow more intimate. The baby latched on after a few tries, and Willa felt another surge of that fierce maternal love. Everything had changed in the space of one night. Yesterday she had been alone, terrified, running from a past that haunted her. Today she was a mother, and somehow that felt like armor against the world. "Can I ask you something?" Cole said, still facing away. "Why were you traveling alone? Where is the baby's father?" The question should have hurt, but Willa found she could answer it without flinching. "He died 6 months ago, mining accident in Virginia City. He never knew about the baby." "I am sorry," Cole said, and he sounded like he meant it. "So am I," Willa said quietly. "Thomas was a good man. Not perfect, but good. He deserved better than to die in the dark under 1,000 tons of rock. And you were heading to Sacramento, to my sister. She married a merchant there, has a good life. She said she would take me in, help me get on my feet." Willa paused. "I do not know what I am going to do now. I was supposed to arrive weeks ago. She must think I am dead." "We will get you to Verde once you are strong enough to travel," Cole said. "There is a doctor there and you can send a telegram to your sister. Let her know you are all right." Willa repeated. Cole turned around slowly, checking first that she was decent. "I am not leaving you and the baby alone out here. Once we get to town, you can make your own choices, but until then, you are stuck with me." Something warm unfurled in Willa's chest, and she ducked her head to hide the blush that crept across her cheeks. "I do not even know you." "You know I can keep a promise," Cole said simply. "You know I will not abandon you when things get hard. That is more than most people know about each other." He had a point. Willa studied him in the morning light, taking in details she had missed in the chaos of the night before. He was handsome in a rough-hewn way, with sun lines around his eyes and a scar through one eyebrow that gave him a slightly roguish look. His hands were work-worn and strong, and there was a steadiness to him that made her feel anchored, safe. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked quietly. Cole was quiet for a long moment, poking at the fire. "My mother died giving birth to my youngest brother when I was 15, he finally said. "She was alone except for me and my father, and Pa was too drunk to help. I did not know what to do, and I lost them both. I swore that day that I would never let another woman go through that alone if I could help it." He looked up at her, his eyes shadowed with old pain. "So when I heard you scream last night, I did not have a choice. I had to help." Willa felt tears prick her eyes again. "I am sorry about your mother." "It was a long time ago," Cole said, but she could tell it still hurt. Some losses never stopped hurting. They spent the morning in the homestead while Willa rested and the baby slept. Cole went out to check on his horse, which had weathered the storm under an overhang, and came back with more supplies from his saddlebags. He made a thin soup from jerky and water, boiling it over the fire, and insisted Willa eat every drop. It was the best meal she had ever tasted. "Do you have a name for him?" Cole asked, nodding at the baby. Willa looked down at her son, considering. She had thought about names during her pregnancy, but nothing had felt right. Now, looking at this tiny person who had fought so hard to be born, she knew. "Thomas," she said softly. "After his father, Thomas James Vance." "That is a good name," Cole said. "Strong." "What about you?" Willa asked. "Do you have family at the Lucky Star?" Cole shook his head. "No family, just me and the work. I have been drifting since my mother died, picking up jobs where I can find them. Worked cattle drives, ranches, did some time as a deputy in Colorado. The Lucky Star is the longest I've stayed anywhere in 8 years. Do you like it there?" "It is as good as anywhere else," Cole said with a shrug. "The owner, Mr. Harrison, is fair. The work is hard but honest. I have got a bunk and 3 meals a day. That is more than a lot of folks have." There was something in his voice, a loneliness that Willa recognized because she felt it too. They were both adrift, both running from things they could not change, both trying to find solid ground in a world that kept shifting under their feet. "What do you want?" Willa asked impulsively. "If you could have anything, what would it be?" Cole looked startled by the question, then thoughtful. "I do not know," he admitted. "I have been running so long I forgot to think about where I might want to stop." His eyes found hers across the fire. "What about you?" "I want my son to be safe," Willa said immediately. "I want him to grow up knowing he is loved, that he matters. I want him to have opportunities I never had, and I want," she broke off, feeling foolish. "What?" Cole prompted gently. "I want to feel like I belong somewhere," Willa finished quietly. "Like I am not just surviving but actually living. Is that selfish?" "That is the opposite of selfish," Cole said firmly. "That is being human." They looked at each other across the fire, and Willa felt something pass between them, a recognition and understanding that went beyond words. This man had seen her at her most vulnerable, had held her life and her son's life in his hands, and he had not flinched. That meant something. It had to. By early afternoon, Willa felt strong enough to attempt the journey to Verdi. Cole helped her onto his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Sadie, and settled the baby carefully in her arms before swinging up behind her. The position was intimate, his chest against her back, his arms around her to hold the reins, but Willa found she did not mind. If anything, it felt right. The ride to Verdi took 2 hours at a careful walk. Cole kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out landmarks and telling stories about the area, and Willa suspected it was partly to keep her awake and alert. She was grateful for it. The world seemed sharp and too bright after the dim closeness of the homestead, and without his voice to anchor her, she might have drifted away into exhaustion. Verdi was a small town, barely more than a handful of buildings clustered around the railroad tracks, but to Willa it looked like civilization. Cole took her straight to the doctor's office, a neat white building at the end of the main street, and helped her down from the horse with careful hands. Dr. Raymond was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and efficient movements. He examined Willa and the baby in his clean, well-lit office and pronounced them both remarkably healthy considering the circumstances. "You did good work," he told Cole, who had waited in the outer room. "Most men would have panicked." "I just did what needed doing," Cole said, but Willa could see the pride in his eyes. "She needs rest and good food," Dr. Raymond continued, "and the baby needs to be kept warm and fed. I would recommend staying in town for at least a few days before attempting any more travel." "Is there a hotel?" Willa asked, then felt her heart sink. She had almost no money left. The elderly couple had only charged her a few dollars for passage, but she had already spent most of her savings on food and supplies for the journey. Cole seemed to read her expression. "I will cover the hotel," he said quietly. "I cannot ask you to do that." "You are not asking, I am offering." His voice was firm, brooking no argument. "You and Thomas need somewhere safe to stay, and I have got the money. Let me do this, Willa." She wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her independence, but the truth was she had no choice. So she nodded, feeling tears of frustration and gratitude burn behind her eyes. The hotel was small but clean, and the proprietress, a no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Garrett, immediately took Willa under her wing. She clucked over the baby, brought up warm water for washing, and promised to send up a hot meal within the hour. Cole carried Willa's carpetbag upstairs and set it by the bed, then stood awkwardly in the doorway. "I should go," he said. "Let you rest. Will you come back?" Willa asked and hated how small her voice sounded. Cole's expression softened. "Tomorrow," he promised. "I need to get back to the Lucky Star and let them know where I have been, but I will ride back tomorrow to check on you and Thomas. Is that all right?" It had to be. Willa nodded, and Cole touched the brim of his hat before leaving. The room felt suddenly too quiet without him, and Willa realized with a jolt that she missed him already. That was dangerous. She barely knew this man. He had helped her, yes, but that did not mean anything beyond basic human decency. She could not start building castles in the air around a cowboy who would probably disappear from her life as quickly as he had entered it. But when she looked down at Thomas, sleeping peacefully in the basket Mrs. Garrett had provided, Willa could not help but think of Cole's hands bringing her son into the world, of his steady voice talking her through the worst moments of her life, of the way he had looked at her across the fire that morning like she was someone worth knowing. She fell asleep thinking about him, and dreamed of storms and steady hands and eyes that promised safety. Cole returned the next day as promised, and the day after that, and the day after that. Each visit started with him checking on Willa and the baby, asking how they were feeling if they needed anything. But the visits grew longer, the conversations deeper. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories of their pasts, their fears and hopes for the future. Willa learned that Cole had been born in Texas, that he loved horses more than people most days, that he read dime novels in his bunk at night when the other ranch hands were playing cards. Cole learned that Willa had grown up on a farm in Missouri, that she had married Thomas when she was 19 because he was kind and seemed steady, that she loved thunderstorms, despite what had happened during the birth, because they made her feel alive. On the fourth day, Cole brought a small carved wooden rattle for Thomas, and Willa felt her heart do something complicated in her chest when she saw the careful workmanship, the hours it must have taken him to make it. "You made this?" she asked, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "I am not much good at fancy things," Cole said, looking embarrassed, "but I thought the baby might like it." "It is perfect," Willa said softly. "Thank you." Their eyes met, and something sparked between them, hot and bright and terrifying. Cole looked away first, clearing his throat. "I should tell you," he said. "I sent a telegram to your sister in Sacramento, told her you were safe in Verde and had the baby. She replied this morning. She is coming here." Willa's first reaction was relief, then confusion. "Here? Why would she come here?" "She said she was worried sick and wanted to see you and the baby with her own eyes. She should arrive on the train in 3 days. 3 days. Such a short time, and yet it felt like the world was shifting again. Willa had been existing in a strange bubble for the past few days, just her and Thomas and Cole's daily visits. The arrival of her sister meant rejoining the real world, making decisions about her future, moving forward with her life. "That is good," she said, and tried to mean it. Cole studied her face. "You do not sound sure." "I am grateful," Willa said quickly. "Dorothy has been nothing but kind, offering to take me in. It is just—" She broke off, not sure how to put her feelings into words. "You do not want to be someone's charity case," Cole said quietly. "Yes," Willa admitted. "I know that is prideful. I should just be grateful for the help." "Pride is not always a bad thing," Cole said. "Means you have got backbone." They sat in silence for a moment, watching Thomas sleep. Then Cole spoke again, his voice careful. "What if you did not go to Sacramento?" Willa's head snapped up. "What? What if you stayed here in Verde? There are not many people, but there are families. They would need help sometimes, someone who knows about birthing and healing. You could build something here." "I do not have any money," Willa said practically, even as her heart started to beat faster. "I could not afford to rent a room, let alone set myself up." "You could stay at the Lucky Star," Cole said, the words coming out in a rush. "Mr. Harrison's wife died 2 years ago, and he has been struggling to keep the house. He could use someone to help with cooking and cleaning, and it would give you a place to live while you figure things out. The pay would not be much, but it would be yours. You would not be dependent on anyone's charity." Willa stared at him. "Why would you do this for me?" Cole met her eyes, and there was something raw and honest in his expression. "Because I want you to stay," he said simply. "I know I have got no right to ask that. I know you barely know me. But these past few days, talking with you, being around you and Thomas—" He broke off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I have not felt this alive in years, Willa. I do not want it to end." Willa's breath caught in her throat. She had been trying so hard not to acknowledge her own growing feelings, telling herself it was just gratitude, just the intimacy of what they had been through together. But looking at Cole now, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, she could not lie to herself anymore. She cared about him. More than cared. "I feel it too," she whispered. "But Cole, I am a widow with a newborn baby. I have nothing to offer you." "You have everything to offer me," Cole said fiercely. He moved closer, taking her hand carefully. "I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow or make any promises. I am just asking you to stay. Give us a chance to see what it might become." Willa looked down at their joined hands, his calloused and scarred, hers still soft despite everything. "What if it does not work?" "Then at least we tried," Cole said. "But Willa, I have got a feeling about this, about you. I think you feel it too." She did. God help her, she did. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, this possibility of something new and good rising from the ashes of her old life. but she had Thomas to think about now. She could not make decisions based solely on her own desires. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Can I give you an answer after I talk to my sister?" Cole nodded, squeezing her hand gently before letting go. "Of course. I am not going anywhere." When Dorothy arrived 3 days later, Willa barely recognized her. It had been 2 years since they had seen each other, and her sister had changed. She was more polished now, wearing an expensive traveling suit and a hat with real feathers, every inch the successful merchant's wife. But when she saw Willa and the baby, her face crumpled and she burst into tears. "I thought I had lost you," Dorothy sobbed, hugging Willa carefully. "When you did not arrive, when there was no word, I imagined the worst things." "I am sorry," Willa said, holding her sister close. "Everything went wrong, but I am here now. We both are." Dorothy pulled back to look at Thomas, her expression softening. "He is beautiful. He looks like Thomas Sr." "I know," Willa said quietly. "I see it too." They spent the afternoon catching up, Willa telling the story of the birth and the storm, Dorothy filling her in on life in Sacramento. Her brother-in-law, Richard, was doing well, expanding his mercantile business. They had a nice house with room for Willa and the baby. Dorothy painted a picture of comfort and security, everything Willa had been hoping for when she started this journey. But as her sister talked, Willa found her mind drifting to Cole, to his offer, to the possibility of staying in Verde and building something of her own. "You have been quiet," Dorothy observed after dinner. "Is something wrong?" Willa hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "I have been thinking about staying here." Dorothy's eyebrows shot up. "In Verde, why would you do that? There is nothing here." "There is work," Willa said. "A rancher needs help with his house, and I could do that while building up a practice helping women with birthing and healing. It would be mine, Dorothy. My own life, not someone else's charity." "Is this about that cowboy?" Dorothy asked shrewdly. "The one who helped you, Mrs. Garrett told me he has been visiting every day." Willa felt her cheeks heat. "His name is Cole, and yes, he is part of it, but this is more than that. This is about me deciding what kind of life I want for me and Thomas." Dorothy reached across the table and took her hand. "I am not offering charity, Willa. You are my sister. I want to help you." "I know," Willa said softly, "and I love you for it. But Dorothy, I have been dependent on other people my whole life. First our parents, then Thomas, now you. I need to know I can stand on my own 2 feet. Can you understand that?" Dorothy was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. "I do not like it," she admitted. "But yes, I understand. When did you get so strong?" "About 4 days ago," Willa said with a small smile. "In a storm when I had no other choice." They talked late into the night, Dorothy trying to convince Willa to at least visit Sacramento first, Willa gently but firmly holding her ground. By the time they went to bed, nothing was completely resolved, but there was understanding between them. Dorothy might not like Willa's choice, but she respected it. The next morning, Cole arrived early, looking nervous. Willa met him downstairs in the hotel dining room and introduced him to Dorothy, who studied him with the sharp eyes of an older sister evaluating a potential threat. "So you are the famous Cole," Dorothy said. "My sister tells me you saved her life." "She saved her own life," Cole said firmly. "I just helped." Dorothy's expression softened slightly. "Mrs. Garrett also tells me you have been visiting every day and that you paid for Willa's room." "It was the least I could do." "And now you want my sister to stay in this dusty little town and work as a housekeeper." Cole's jaw tightened. "I want your sister to have choices. What she does with them is up to her." "Dorothy," Willa said warningly, "he is trying to help." "Everyone is always trying to help," Dorothy said, but her tone was gentler. She studied Cole for another moment, then nodded. "All right, you seem decent enough. But if you hurt her, Cowboy, I will hunt you down myself." "Understood." "Understood," Cole said, and he looked like he meant it. Dorothy left on the afternoon train, extracting a promise from Willa to write every week and to visit Sacramento when Thomas was old enough to travel. Willa stood on the platform watching the train disappear into the distance, feeling like she was closing the door on one chapter of her life and opening another. Cole appeared beside her, close but not touching. "Did you make a decision?" Willa turned to look at him. This man who had appeared in her darkest moment like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to say. She thought about the steadiness of him, the kindness, the way he made her feel seen and valued. She thought about the life she could build here, the independence, the possibility of something real and good. "I want to stay," she said. "If the offer is still open." The smile that broke across Cole's face was like sunrise. "It is open. It will always be open." He offered her his arm, and Willa took it, feeling the solid warmth of him through her sleeve. They walked back toward the hotel together, talking about practical things like when she should move to the Lucky Star and what she would need for the baby. But underneath, the practical words was something else, a current of promise and possibility that made Willa's heart feel light for the first time in months. The Lucky Star Ranch was 5 miles north of Verde, nestled in a valley with the Sierra Nevada mountains rising in the distance. It was smaller than Willa had expected. Just a main house, a bunkhouse, a barn, and a few outbuildings, but it was well maintained and had a feeling of permanence that she liked. Mr. Harrison was a gruff man in his 50s with gray in his beard and kind eyes. He looked Willa and Thomas over with the same assessing gaze he probably used on horses, then nodded. "Cole says you are a hard worker and know your way around a house," he said. "That true?" "Yes, sir," Willa said, lifting her chin. "I grew up on a farm. I can cook, clean, mend, and help with any number of tasks. I can also help with birthing and healing if needed." "The pay is not much," Harrison warned. $20 a month plus room and board. You would have the small cabin out back, the one my foreman used before he moved on. It is not fancy, but it is solid and has a good stove. $20 a month was more than Willa had dared hope for. "That sounds fair." "All right then," Harrison said. "You can start tomorrow. Cole will help you get settled." The cabin was small, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was clean and tight against the weather. There was a bed frame, a table, 2 chairs, and a cast iron stove that looked like it had seen better days but still worked. Cole helped Willa carry her few belongings inside, then spent the afternoon making repairs, fixing a loose floorboard and patching a crack in the window. "You do not have to do all this," Willa said, watching him work. "I want to," Cole said simply. "I want you to be comfortable here." That night, Willa put Thomas to bed in the drawer she was using as a cradle and stood at the window, looking out at the darkening landscape. She could see lights in the main house, hear the distant sound of the ranch hands talking in the bunkhouse. It was strange and new and nothing like the life she had planned, but it felt right. There was a knock on the door, and when Willa opened it, Cole was standing there with a lamp in one hand and a covered basket in the other. "I thought you might not have had time to cook," he said. "Mrs. Harrison's sister lives in town, and she sent over some stew and bread." Willa's stomach growled, reminding her that she had barely eaten all day. "That was very thoughtful. Would you like to come in and share it?" They ate at the small table, the lamp casting warm shadows on the walls. Thomas slept peacefully in his drawer, and outside the wind whispered through the sagebrush. It was domestic and comfortable in a way that made Willa's chest ache. "Thank you for this," she said quietly. "For all of this. I know I keep saying it, but I do not think you understand how much it means." "I think I do," Cole said, his eyes serious. "Willa, I need to tell you something." Her heart started to beat faster. All right. When I saw you in that homestead, when I realized what was happening, I was terrified, Cole admitted. I kept thinking about my mother, about how I failed her. But you were so brave, so strong. You fought for your baby and yourself even when you thought you could not go on. That changed something in me. What do you mean? Willa asked softly. I have been running for 8 years, Cole said. Running from the memory of my mother dying, from the guilt of not being able to save her from myself. But helping you, being with you these past days, it made me realize I do not want to run anymore. I want to stop. I want to build something real. He paused. I want to build it with you. Willa's breath caught. Cole, I am not asking for anything you are not ready to give, he said quickly. I know it is too soon. You are still grieving your husband, still adjusting to being a mother. I just need you to know how I feel. I care about you, Willa. More than I have cared about anyone in a very long time. And I will wait as long as it takes for you to be ready if you think you might ever feel the same way. Willa's eyes filled with tears. I do feel the same way, she whispered. It terrifies me, but I do. When I think about my future now, you are in it. You and Thomas in this place. Is that crazy? If it is, then we are both crazy, Cole said with a smile. He reached across the table and took her hand. We will take it slow. No rushing, no pressure. We will just see where this goes. Is that all right? That is more than all right, Willa said. They sat there holding hands across the table, and Willa felt something settle inside her. A sense of rightness and possibility that she had not felt in a very long time. This was not the life she had planned, but maybe it was the life she was meant to have. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Willa settled into the rhythm of ranch life, cooking and cleaning for Mr. Harrison, taking care of Thomas, slowly building relationships with the ranch hands and the few families who lived nearby. She helped the blacksmith's wife through a difficult pregnancy, assisted with a breech birth for a homesteader's wife 10 miles away, and slowly built a reputation as someone who knew her way around healing and birthing. Through it all, Cole was a constant presence. He ate breakfast with her most mornings before heading out to work with the cattle. He came by in the evenings to play with Thomas, teaching the baby to grab his finger and making silly faces that made Willa laugh. On Sundays, when there was no work to be done, they would take long walks together, exploring the valley and talking about everything and nothing. The attraction between them grew stronger with each passing day, but true to his word, Cole never pushed. He would hold her hand, stand close enough that she could feel the heat of him, look at her with eyes that promised everything. But he waited, patient and steady, until Willa was ready. It was 6 months after Thomas's birth when Willa finally kissed him. They were standing by the corral, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and red. Thomas was asleep against Willa's shoulder, and Cole was telling some ridiculous story about a cow that had gotten stuck in a creek. Willa was not really listening to the words, just watching the way his face moved when he talked, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. You are not paying attention, Cole said, but he was smiling. No, Willa admitted. I am not. What are you thinking about? Instead of answering, Willa reached up and pulled his face down to hers, kissing him softly. Cole froze for a heartbeat, then his arms came around her carefully, mindful of the baby between them, and he kissed her back with a gentleness that made her knees weak. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that for 6 months, he admitted. I know, Willa said with a smile. I just needed time. Was it worth the wait? Yes, Willa said firmly and kissed him again. After that, their relationship deepened in ways both small and profound. Cole started staying later in the evenings, helping Willa with Thomas, reading to her from his dime novels while she mended clothes. They talked about their pasts without flinching, about the people they had lost, and the mistakes they had made. Willa told him about her marriage to Thomas, how she had cared for him but never really been in love with him, how guilty that made her feel. Cole told her about the years of drifting, the fights he had gotten into, the times he had drunk too much trying to forget. "I am not proud of who I was," he said one night, "but I am trying to be better." "You are better," Willa said firmly. "You are good, Cole. You saved my life and my son's life. You have given us a home and a future. That is not nothing." "It feels like nothing compared to what you have given me," Cole said quietly. "You made me want to stop running. That is everything." On Thomas's first birthday, Cole asked Willa to marry him. They were having a small celebration in the cabin, just the three of them and a cake that Willa had baked. Thomas was sitting on the floor, happily destroying a piece of cake with his chubby hands, laughing at the mess he was making. Cole watched them both with an expression so full of love that Willa felt her heart squeeze. "Marry me," he said suddenly. Willa looked up, startled. "What? Marry me?" Cole repeated, moving to kneel beside her. "I know we have only known each other for a year, but Willa, I love you. I love Thomas. I want to be his father officially. I want us to be a real family. Say yes." Willa's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course, yes." Cole's whoop of joy startled Thomas, who looked up from his cake with wide eyes, then laughed and clapped his sticky hands together. Cole scooped them both up, careful of the baby, and spun them around the small cabin while Willa laughed and cried at the same time. They were married 2 weeks later in Verde, with Mr. Harrison and the ranch hands in attendance. Dorothy and her husband made the journey from Sacramento, and even Dr. Raymond came to the ceremony. It was small and simple, but it was perfect. "I, Cole Ashford, take you, Willa Vance, to be my lawfully wedded wife," Cole said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to love you and Thomas, to provide for you, to stand by you in good times and bad for the rest of my life. I, Willa Vance, take you, Cole Ashford, to be my lawfully wedded husband," Willa said through happy tears. "I promise to love you, to be your partner, to build a life with you for the rest of my days." When they kissed, the small crowd cheered, and Thomas, sitting on Dorothy's hip, let out a squeal of delight that made everyone laugh. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. Cole and Willa worked hard, building a life together at the Lucky Star. Thomas grew into a bright, curious boy who followed Cole everywhere, learning about horses and cattle and the land. When he was 3, Willa gave birth to a daughter they named Caroline, a tiny thing with Willa's dark hair and Cole's blue eyes. 2 years after that came another son, James, who was loud and fearless from the day he was born. Mr. Harrison, growing older and appreciating Cole's dedication and skill, eventually made him foreman of the ranch, with a share in the profits. It meant more responsibility, but also more stability. They were able to expand the cabin, adding rooms for the growing children, and Willa's practice as a midwife and healer grew as well. Women came from miles around when their time came, trusting Willa's steady hands and calm presence. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Cole and Willa took a rare evening to themselves, leaving the children with Mr. Harrison and riding out to the old abandoned homestead where Thomas had been born. It was falling apart now, the roof almost completely gone, the walls leaning at dangerous angles. But it was still there, a monument to the night that had changed both their lives. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Willa asked, standing in what used to be the doorway. "If you had not found me that night, every day," Cole admitted. "And I thank God every time that I did find you. That storm brought me to you, Willa. It brought us to each other." "We have built something good, have we not?" Willa said, leaning back against his chest. "We have built something extraordinary," Cole corrected, wrapping his arms around her. "3 beautiful children, a home, a life that matters. What more could anyone want?" "Nothing," Willa said softly. "Absolutely nothing." They stood there in the ruins of the old homestead, watching the sun set over the Nevada desert, and Willa thought about the woman she had been that terrible night, alone and terrified and convinced she was going to die. She thought about the cowboy who had stumbled through the door like an answer to her prayers, who had brought her son safely into the world and then given her a reason to keep fighting for a future. "I love you," she said, turning in Cole's arms to face him. "I do not say it enough, but I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes." "I love you too," Cole said, cupping her face in his hands. "You are the bravest, strongest, most beautiful woman I have ever known, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." "You already do," Willa said, and kissed him with all the love and gratitude and joy that filled her heart to bursting. As the years continued to pass, the family at the Lucky Star thrived. Thomas grew into a young man with his father's kindness and his mother's strength, eventually taking over much of the day-to-day management of the ranch. Caroline became a skilled rider and sharp businesswoman, handling the financial side of the operation with a head for numbers that impressed everyone. James, true to his early nature, became a bronc rider, traveling to rodeos across Nevada and California, always returning home with stories that made his parents both proud and terrified. When Mr. Harrison passed away at the age of 72, he left the Lucky Star to Cole and Willa in his will, a recognition of the years they had poured into the land and the family they had built there. Cole stood at the old man's grave with tears in his eyes, promising to honor his memory by taking care of the ranch and the people who depended on it. "He gave us a chance when we needed it most," Cole said that night, holding Willa close. "I will never forget that." "Neither will I," Willa agreed. "We will make sure his legacy lives on." And they did. The Lucky Star became known throughout Nevada as a well-run, fair operation, a place where cowboys knew they would be treated with respect and paid honest wages. Willa's reputation as a healer grew as well, and she trained several younger women in the skills of midwifery, ensuring that no woman in the area would have to face childbirth alone the way she had. On their 20th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, Cole and Willa renewed their vows. Thomas had married a schoolteacher from Reno and had 2 children of his own. Caroline had surprised everyone by falling in love with a Paiute man named Running Deer who worked on a neighboring ranch, and their marriage had been a beautiful blending of cultures. James was still unmarried, but showed up with a new sweetheart every few months, much to his mother's amusement. 20 years, Cole said, holding Willa's hand as they stood before the minister. 20 years of waking up next to you, of building this life together, of watching our children grow. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." "So would I," Willa said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You saved my life that night in the storm, Cole. But more than that, you gave me a reason to live it. You showed me what love really means, what family really means. These 20 years have been the greatest gift of my life." When they kissed, their children cheered and their grandchildren clapped, and Willa felt a sense of completeness that she had never imagined possible on that terrible, wonderful night so many years ago. As they grew older, Cole and Willa gradually stepped back from the daily operations of the ranch, letting Thomas and Caroline take over while they enjoyed a slower pace of life. They spent their days working in the garden Willa had always wanted, taking long rides through the valley they loved, and spoiling their grandchildren outrageously. "We did it," Willa said one evening, sitting on the porch of their expanded cabin and watching the sunset paint the mountains the same gold and red they had seen on that first evening by the corral. "We built the life we dreamed about. We did better than that," Cole said, taking her hand. His hair was silver now, his face deeply lined by years of sun and wind, but his eyes were still the same steady blue that had given her courage through the worst night of her life. "We built something that will last beyond us. Our children, our grandchildren, they will carry on what we started here." "Do you have any regrets?" Willa asked. Cole was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Only one," he finally said. "I wish I could go back and tell that scared kid I was, the one who watched his mother die and thought he had failed her, that he did not fail, that he would get another chance, that he would find a woman and a baby in a storm and they would save him just as much as he saved them." Willa's eyes filled with tears. "You did not fail her, Cole. You never failed anyone." "I know that now," Cole said, squeezing her hand. "You taught me that. You taught me a lot of things." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the light fade from the sky. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of Caroline helping her children with their homework, the laughter of Thomas's son as he played with the dog. The Lucky Star was alive with family, with love, with the legacy they had built together. "I love you, Willa Ashford," Cole said softly. "I loved you from the moment I saw you fighting to bring Thomas into the world, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "I love you too," Willa said, resting her head on his shoulder. "You are my storm and my shelter, my beginning and my forever." The stars came out one by one, brilliant against the darkening sky, and the wind whispered through the sagebrush like a blessing. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its mate, and the horses in the corral nickered softly to each other. It was a perfect Nevada night, full of promise and peace. Years later, when Willa passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, Cole sat by her bedside and held her hand long after she had taken her last breath. He thought about that night in the storm, about the terrified young widow and the drifting cowboy who had found each other in the darkness. He thought about all the years between, the joys and sorrows, the births and deaths, the endless accumulation of moments that had made up their life together. "Thank you," he whispered, pressing a kiss to her still warm forehead. "Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me a home." Cole lived for 3 more years, long enough to see Thomas's daughter married, long enough to hold his first great-grandchild, long enough to know that the Lucky Star would continue to thrive under the care of the family he and Willa had built. When his time came, he went peacefully, sitting in his chair on the porch and watching the sunset one last time. They buried him next to Willa in the small cemetery on the hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Thomas stood at the graveside with his arm around his sister, both of them crying, both of them grateful for the parents who had shown them what real love looked like. "They had something special," Caroline said, wiping her eyes. "Something most people only dream about." "They did," Thomas agreed. "And they built it out of nothing. Out of a storm and desperation and pure stubborn will. That is their legacy to us." Years turned into decades, and the story of Cole and Willa became part of the Lucky Star's history, passed down through generations. The old abandoned homestead where Thomas had been born eventually collapsed completely, but the family placed a marker there, a simple stone that read, "Here, on a stormy night in 1876, a cowboy and a widow found each other and built a love that would last forever." The Lucky Star continued to thrive, run by Thomas's children and then by their children, each generation adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation that Cole and Willa had laid. The ranch became known not just for its cattle and horses, but for being a place where family mattered, where hard work was rewarded, where people took care of each other. And sometimes, on stormy nights when the wind howled across the Nevada desert and the rain hammered against the roofs, the family would gather together and someone would tell the story again. The story of the woman trying to deliver a baby alone in a storm, and the cowboy who arrived and helped her through it. The story of two lost souls who found each other in the darkness and built a life full of light. It was a story of courage and kindness, of second chances and new beginnings. But most of all, it was a story of love fierce, enduring, transformative love that proved that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best things we will ever know. The storm still came to Nevada, rolling across the desert with thunder and lightning and driving rain. But in the valley where the lucky star stood, sheltered by mountains and built on a foundation of love, the family weathered every storm together, just as Cole and Willa had taught them to do. Their legacy lived on in the strength of their children, the prosperity of the ranch, and the enduring power of the love story that had started it all. And that, more than anything, was the greatest gift two people could leave behind: proof that love, real love, the kind that is forged in fire and tested by time, can not only survive but thrive, creating ripples that spread out across generations, touching lives that the original lovers would never even know. Cole and Willa's love had been that kind of love, and the lucky star stood as a testament to what two people could build when they chose each other, every single day for the rest of their lives. The end of their story was not an ending at all, but a continuation, a legacy that would live on long after the last person who knew them personally had passed away. Because some stories are too powerful to die, some loves too profound to fade. And the story of the cowboy and the widow, of the storm and the baby, of the second chances and the new beginnings, was exactly that kind of story, one that would be told and retold, inspiring hope in every generation that heard it, proof that even in our darkest moments, salvation might be just around the corner, in the form of a stranger who becomes the love of our life.